Hey, Dios te bendiga. Soy el evangelista Jay Jimenez, asociado de la iglesia Triunfo aquí en Inglewood, California. Y adivina qué, estamos aquí una semana más en The Hangout. Wow. We got whistles in the back, clapping. We're excited. Estamos bien contentos, muy emocionados siempre cada semana de poder llegar a tu casa. Damos gracias a Radio Inspiración por la oportunidad y el deseo de abrir un vínculo para cada joven, para cada madre y para cada familia. Originalmente esto se inició como un programa para la juventud y lo sigue siendo. Sin embargo, también tenemos algo para cada madre, cada padre, porque sabes, no solamente me acompañan jóvenes, sino que también me acompañan casados. ¿Dónde están los casados? Make some noise. Son nomás 2, 3, pero aquí están. Y eso es lo que importa. Así que, madre, padre de familia, estás más que invitado a invitar a tu hijo y a tu hija a que se una con nosotros. Gracias, Radio Inspiración, por abrir esta oportunidad. Thank you so much. Y sabes, en esta semana hay algo lo cual Dios depositaba en mi corazón, el tema que hoy yo quiero hablar con cada uno de ustedes y también con cada uno de los que hoy tú nos escuchas en sintonía, ya sea a través de la radio, ya sea a través de Facebook, de Instagram, cual sea la plataforma social de Radio Inspiración. No solamente converso con los que estamos aquí, sino que también converso contigo, que hoy tú me escuchas. Y el Espíritu Santo depositaba en mí la necesidad de hablar sobre la importancia de saber cómo responder a las temporadas que nos tocan vivir. Tú que hablas inglés, the Spirit of God was just taking me to a place to speak about the importance of knowing how to respond to seasons. Creo que hay algo lo cual todos tenemos en común y es algo lo cual aún hablábamos la semana antepasada, que hemos atravesado por temporadas donde honestamente no entendemos por qué estoy aquí. ¿Por qué estoy pasando por lo que estoy pasando? ¿Por qué estoy viviendo por lo que estoy viviendo? ¿Por qué se fue quien se fue? ¿Por qué perdí lo que perdí? ¿Por qué me traicionó quien me traicionó? ¿Por qué se burló de mí quien se burló de mí? ¿Por qué me despidieron del empleo? ¿Por qué fue que el novio me engañó? La novia me engañó. ¿Por qué es que el matrimonio mío con el cual yo inicié con fuerza, expectativa, ahora se está viniendo para abajo? ¿Por qué es que mis hijos están rebeldes? ¿Por qué es que mis padres no me entienden? ¿Por qué es que estoy batallando con pornografía, con droga, con cualquier adicción? Todos hemos estado en una temporada y todos nos hemos encontrado en temporadas diversas. Sin embargo, lo que Dios depositaba en mi corazón era la importancia de saber cómo yo respondo a esas temporadas. Lastimosamente, a veces respondemos desde un lugar donde estamos heridos, donde estamos confundidos, donde hemos sido, my goodness, cautivados por todo lo que nos está pasando al grado y al nivel donde honestamente estamos respondiendo a un problema de una manera equivocada. Y hay algo lo cual yo meditaba y era lo siguiente: muchas de las veces lo más malo que nos puede suceder no es lo que nos sucede, sino es cómo respondemos a lo que nos está sucediendo. Entonces, alguien se puede hacer la pregunta: no entiendo por qué me está sucediendo lo que me está sucediendo, no entiendo cómo sucedió, por qué sucedió, cuándo sucedió y no sé qué hacer. Sin embargo, no hay cosa más difícil que responder desde un lugar de inseguridad. Hay respuestas las cuales no ocupan palabras. Hay respuestas las cuales vienen a través de palabras, pero hay otras respuestas las cuales vienen a través de silencio. Hay respuestas que vienen a través de enojo. Hay respuestas que vienen a través de que tú no estás dispuesto a perdonar. Y tu forma de responder a la traición de esa persona es: yo no voy a perdonar. Yo no voy a soltar. Yo no voy a dejar ir. ¿Sabes? La forma en cómo tú y yo respondemos da a conocer lo que hemos retenido de las cosas que nos han tocado vivir. The way in how we respond to seasons that we encounter and we live are only a small reflection of things that we have retained from certain seasons to which we've been exposed to. And if we're honest, si somos honestos one with the other, you cannot answer a question to which you do not have an answer to. And sometimes it is possible to say that we cannot answer in a healthy way because we have not been healed ourselves. There was a man in the Bible that said, Peter and John said to this lame man that was sitting close to a door called the Beautiful of the temple, from what I have, I give unto you. And unfortunately, we pour out what we have. You can't fake it. Somebody said, fake it till you make it. No, that's not how it works. Sooner or later, what's inside of you will come to be known by everybody around you. You can sit with somebody 5 minutes and you know what they got going on the inside. You can talk or text with somebody and you know what's going on through their mind. And sometimes what we pour out, what we reflect, is only a small a fracture of what we have retained. I'd like to read the following. How I reply determines and discovers what was released to me and how much of that I retained. Not only that, but I'd like to read this following part. As a man thinketh, so is he. Out of the abundance of my heart, so speaks my mouth. In other words, you can't fill a saddened heart's mouth with joy. You can't fill a troubled heart's mouth with peace. We ask God to sometimes heal things that because of our own fault, our own response, because we didn't know how to, manage this situation, this circumstance in my life. Now I find myself in a season where I put myself in. And you see, God will take you out of seasons when there's a purpose. But I really want to address that person that tonight is hearing, and you're saying, well, I feel it was my fault. I feel it's because of what I did, because of what I said. In other words, let's look at the life of Joseph and his brothers. Joseph is thrown into a pit, but God has a way of taking him out. But it's not only Joseph who is suffering because of what was done to him. His brothers have to suffer with the guilt of what they did to him as well. So oftentimes we are suffering either because something was done to us or because we did something to someone that didn't deserve it. And sometimes, unfortunately, we are responding in a way that is not the right way. Estamos respondiendo de una manera incorrecta a las temporadas que nos están tocando vivir. So I just want to hear what you guys have to say, what God is placing in your heart, even from thinking on this introduction, if you want to call it, so to say. How do I respond to seasons that I do not have the answers to? How do I respond to questions and circumstances that I never thought I'd go through? I know that all of us have gone through something. So what is an insight of what you've gone through and you have been able to respond in a certain way too? I want to hear what you got to say. Everybody's quiet.
So I just want to say my glasses got stuck in my hair, but I just recently got out of a rough patch. As my sister is a witness, Maria is a witness, Josh is a witness, and so I had a miscarriage in January, and then I think I've spoken before where on one of the podcasts that my mom left the home and she just recently came back, and now finally my relationship with my mother is fixing itself. But it caused a lot of tension at church in my ministry. I used to be the vocal leader. I was in charge of the voices and everything, and it was so bad the way I reacted that tensions were going on with friends, with people from church in my ministry. So I got stripped of my leadership, and sadly, some friends, we stopped talking for a while. I felt like I was really abandoned. And it is true what you said, that it's a reflection of what we're holding on to. Because to me, I had a rough childhood, so I started shutting down. My coping mechanism as a child with my parents was shutting down, rebellion, being having a smart mouth, you know.
Mm,
So I was very defensive
yeah.
over everything. I was defensive towards pastors. I was defensive towards Maria. I was very defensive because I like from my childhood I learned how to cope that way. I learned that I had to block and fight my way, out. Um, and it wasn't every Sunday. Every Sunday, I like throughout the week I would listen to, like, I would try to listen to preachings, to worship music.
Mainly my preachings. I'm kidding. No.
No, not kidding. But I would try
She
to
said
listen.
yes.
I would try
Uh-huh.
to listen to those, and but whenever Sunday would come by, the tension would be so great.
Mm,
My bitterness would be so much that I couldn't focus. So I really,
wow.
I really needed to take a break and step back from everything and just really focus, like, on 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 what God wanted me to do. The and it was hard. It was hard, and it wasn't until I had to get um sat down by, oh, so beautiful Maria. And she said that, um we had a heart to heart. We really had a heart to heart, and she was the person that I really needed to have a heart to heart with, because Maria, like, we've been friends since 2010. Like, Maria has always known how to talk to me, um and calm me down. So um I needed to really hear that I was loved and accepted by people. And
She
she
was able to pour into you.
yeah, she was able to pour into me. um and I just want to say, like, to whoever's going through seasons, your feelings are valid. Feel what you need to feel. It's fine. But always have a person that can ground you.
Mm.
Find that person. Find that person that is always gonna ground you, and that person is gonna find a person that's not gonna just hear you out and tell you, like, oh no, you're right, you're right, you're right. Like, find a person that's also gonna tell you when you're wrong. you know a real friend is a friend that's gonna tell you the truth whether you like it or not. And
Wow.
I needed that person to ground me, like, not like they had, like, leave aside, God and everything. That's important, but always find a person, preferably Christian, preferably someone that's
Oh yeah, yeah.
like-minded.
Of course, of course,
And
of
that
course.
find a
That
person
loves
that's always
God.
gonna
Yeah.
ground you and give you good advice. I that's my advice to people.
Keith Allen, we went to go get some coffee. I can't say where because we can't get promotions to any coffee shop. But you guys know where. If you really know me, you know where. Um, and your story really brought me to even to reflect on this that we're talking about, because you've been doing ministry with your wife and all these amazing things. I've been doing ministry as well, and that does not exclude nor me nor you nor any of us from experiencing these challenges, and we still have to learn how to respond, and with the pressure that everybody who we are leading sees us as well. What would you say to someone that doesn't know how to respond right now to a given circumstance that they're going through or that they're facing?
Hola, soy Angelo de Strings and Heart y nomás quiero mandar un saludo a Radio Inspiración. Bendiciones y abrazos.
I would just say that first things first is that there's no such thing as a wasted season. That even when you feel that you've been overlooked, even when you feel like you've been hidden, even when you feel like God has forgotten about you, God is using everything for your good, for the future. We cannot lead people if we don't know what it's like to be forgotten about. so that by the time that God promotes you to be a leader, you always will look out for everybody. How could you show full acceptance to people if you haven't received rejection yourself? And so a lot of the things that we go through, a lot of the harm and a lot of the darkness, and how we've grown up, when I was a child, I was molested, I've experienced, loved ones, passing, I've experienced, on the verge of committing suicide. I've had friends make fun of me. I've almost been, jumped by gang members, and I've experienced so many different seasons. I've been in relationships where someone that I love broke my heart, and I wanted to die. Yeah. And I thought all these different seasons that I was going through, one thing that I didn't know is that God had his hand on me. Even when I was in my darkest times, God had his hand on me. And when God brought me through it, now I'm able to see how God is able to use it. One scripture that I stand on is Romans 8:28. It says that in all things, God turns everything around for your good. That means every single season that you go through, God will use it for your good. Every single breakup that you experience, God will use it for your good. Every single rejection that you go through, every single failure, every single mistake that you make, God uses everything around and he turns it for your good. You are unstoppable if you're a child of God. You are unstoppable. The devil cannot do anything, because even when the devil does something, God uses it for gold in a future season. So I just want to encourage anybody that is watching right now. You could be in a dark space right now. You could feel forgotten about. You could feel lonely. You could feel betrayed right now. You could feel like your father, is not showing up to love you how he's supposed to love you, or a mother is not, loving you how she's supposed to love you. But I'm telling you right now, do not give up. Continue to trust God. He is with you. He loves you so much. You're the apple of his eye, and everything that you are going through, he's going to use it for your good. You're going to be a powerful leader. You're going to be a great parent. You're going to be someone that's going to be able to influence so many people, because everything that you're going through right now is going to be a testimony. It's going to be a testimony, and it's going to be a weapon that God is going to use in a later season.
Wow.
Amen.
Yo, bring out the organ, man. I got to give God a praise right now. So knowing how to respond, I was thinking about something, and it's the following. God says, son, give me your heart, because out of your heart, your life is determined, and it's, guided. And there is something that really captures my attention, and it's not only how we respond to seasons, it's sometimes how we respond to God. We ask him for things that are not according to his will. Look, the word of God does not say that he will not give to us. He says, ask, and it will be given unto thee. But it says you have not, because you do not know how to ask. And I like to see it from this way. We go into seasons, we respond to seasons in ways that God never told us to respond like, and we end up broken. And now we are asking God to heal brokenness he never intended. In other words, we ask God to supply for things he never even intended us to have in the first place. And we're responding to this good season of life in a bad way, because we think we have to have more. We think until I reach certain age, until I'm married, until I have children, until I get a raise at my job, until my ministry, it becomes known, until, my parents get it together, until, we're always looking forward to something that we don't know how to respond to what's happening right now. And unfortunately, I want to say this as the following part. We ask God to put together puzzle pieces he never gave us. I'm going to say it one more time. We ask God to put together puzzle pieces he never gave us. We think God is not responding to us, and because we think that in reality, it's not that God is not responding to us. It's that God is not responding in the way that we want him to. Sometimes, oh, this is getting good, man. You've been asking God for the wrong thing. And because he doesn't give it to you, you begin to respond to God in a way that is never designed for you to respond. Brianna, you want to say something?
And that in and of itself is very interesting because it isn't that God isn't responding, it's God saying no. And one of the things that like I'm thinking about in this moment is in el libro de Ecclesiastes chapter 3, the word is clear to tell us that there's a time and a season for everything. There's a time to cry, there's a time to laugh, there's a time to sow, there's a time to reap, there's a time to be still, and a time to move. Even when he spoke to Moses, like when Moses was like, okay, like what do I tell the people? Like, should we go? So he immediately goes to God and he wants to get in prayer. But God tells him, like, do not come to me anymore because I already gave you the answer. So move. So to me, it's saying like there is and I like that word that was mentioned even in prayer in the beginning. This is an appointed time, an appointed meeting. And God is so very specific that he doesn't allow, just like Estrella's situation, our brother Keith's situation, as well as each one of us individually, every season that we're going through, the word is also clear to say that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And that is the end goal that God wants for us. He wants to test what is in your heart in this moment to see, are you really for me? Are you serving me for an altar? Are you serving me for your name to be known? Are you serving me so you could get man recognition? What are you serving me for? Is it really for me? What is in your heart? Because I want to know what is in it. That is the purpose of it all. And in the story of Job, we know this story clearly. It's preached about constantly. We've read the story, right? And this man, the word says that this is God having an appointed time for Job. And
he fell and she took it from you.
And
we were talking about that just
your
specifically.
Appointed time does not look like blessing the way that you want it all the time. Sometimes your appointed time looks like affliction. It looks like sorrow. It looks like pain. It looks like tears. It looks like hurt.
Hey, but that's not easy. Eso no es fácil. How do you respond to something like that?
Brother. So when you look at the story that of that story, like in the very beginning chapters, like you see his wife come to him, and she says what? Maldice a tu Dios y muérete. Curse your God and die. And what is Job's response? He says that, oh, is God only going to bring rain like on like good people, or the sun on good people, or something like that? But God is fair. God is even. And if he brings something into your life, I firmly believe that he's not going to bring something into my life or any one of us that isn't going to produce like good fruit. Because as our brother Keith mentioned as well, is that he has good plans for us, like to prosper us. It's not to harm us, but the way that you react to it, it shows like, do you have that faith in God, that trust in God, that he's moving, that he's with you? That's what he wants to see in the midst of all of that. What are you doing? What are you doing in the midst of that trial, of that process? ¿Qué estás haciendo? Are you glorifying God? Are you still worshiping? And one thing that we were talking about in the beginning, that's a mindset that a lot of people do not have, that it's in the midst of something where you say, keep going. You keep going. Because we have to remember that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against the spirit realm, against things that we cannot see oftentimes as well. Of course, I'm not saying that everything is spiritual, but sometimes it is. And we have to look at it from that lens as well. It isn't just like black and white, but God wants to do something in the midst of everything. It's not pointless. There's something there.
It's not pointless, it's purposeful. But before that, we're going to go to a quick pause. Vamos a ir a una pausa rápidamente y quiero tomar este momento porque septiembre 9, tú que hoy me escuchas, sábado, septiembre 9, vamos a estar en la ciudad de Santa Ana junto con Radio Inspiración, que organiza un evento el cual se llama restaurando las familias de inspiración. Va a ser el sábado 9 de septiembre y puedes encontrar toda la información en radioinspiración.com. Pero en esta ocasión, lo que más me fascina, honestamente, no es solamente que van a estar los programas anteriores, sino que en esta vez extendieron la invitación a mi persona y a todo el grupo de The Hangout para estar ahí. Así que vamos a estar ahí y va a ser un momento increíble. Así que madre, padre, registra a tu hijo, a tu hija, aunque no quiera ir, tiene que ir, porque tenemos algo para su vida. Yo sé que su vida jamás volverá a ser la misma. Así que regístrate ahora mismo, porque es muy importante que tú lo hagas tú y toda tu familia. Regresamos después de esta pausa. This is The Hangout. Bienvenido. Aquí estamos de regreso. Soy el evangelista Jay Jimenez de la iglesia Triunfo en Inglewood, California. Y aquí estamos una vez más. This is The Hangout. Yeah, we're here. I'm excited. The conversation is getting good. So good that I forgot to introduce my beautiful guest, man. Keith Allen. Pastor Keith Allen is here in the house. Woo, he's here. Carlos, pero conocido como Inmortales in the house, man. What? Yo. Acabas de regresar de una gira de 2 años. I'm kidding, no, 2 meses.
Santo,
2
padre.
meses.
2 meses.
Hey,
así es.
¿cómo fue que tú respondes a eso? How do you respond to that?
Eso está poderoso porque yo creo que va encajado con como empezó también la gira. Dios había puesto una palabra en mi corazón basada en un clamor, que es necesario que la iglesia, los hijos de Dios se manifiesten a través de un clamor. Pero sucedió justo cuando yo no quería cantar, no quería predicar. Diciembre 26, el enemigo intenta quitarme la vida. De enero a marzo me encuentro buscando mi sanidad, buscando que Dios quite ese corazón de piedra, que me ayude a perdonar. En marzo voy y me retiro en Tijuana, en una iglesia que se llama Cristo Vive. Me retiro por 10 días y cuando estoy ahí Dios me empieza a hablar y me empieza a dar palabra, pero todavía yo no quería servir. Yo decía, yo quiero sanar primero. Marzo, abril, en abril, a través de una prédica en un servicio, Dios me habla a mi espíritu y me dice: el reino de Dios no es impaciente, pero sí se maneja con urgencia. Y cuando tú vas a la palabra, cuando llegaba la gente a acercarse a Jesús y le decían, te quiero seguir, que les decía, no, pues sígueme, pero ahorita, caliente, ¿verdad? Y ellos decían, no, pues es que tengo que enterrar a mis padres, es que, ¿verdad? Yo te he obedecido en todo, dice, vende
Van a
todo.
haber momentos
así.
Que Dios te demanda una respuesta.
Hay una urgencia.
Y tienes que saber cómo responder en ese momento.
Hay una urgencia y me habló mi espíritu y me dice, ven y sígueme. Ven y sígueme aunque te sientas herido. Ven y sígueme aunque no sientes el deseo de adorarme. Ven y sígueme aunque tú sabes que me necesitas. Ven y sígueme. Y fue ahí donde decidí obedecer y responder al llamado. Yo me puse en contacto con mis amigos pastores. Les dejé saber que Dios me había puesto una palabra en mi corazón. Y al yo ser obediente, el Señor llena todas las fechas, me abre lugares en centros de rehabilitación, casas de rescate, iglesias, wow, para llevar esa palabra de un clamor. Y te digo, me sorprende este mensaje porque hablabas de Josué, el soñador, ¿verdad? Y él, muchas veces decimos José, que él no se dobló en el proceso, pero se nos olvida de que sí se dobló, que mandó mentir, de esconder una copa de plata a sus hermanos, como que ellos se la habían robado. ¿Pero por qué? Porque él se estaba encontrando con su pasado, con heridas de su pasado. No fue hasta que se encontró con su pasado que se dio cuenta que había falta de perdón dentro de él. Y por eso es que Dios permite que pasemos por procesos que nos sacuden, porque revelan qué es lo que hay dentro de nosotros. Por ejemplo, un flask, ¿verdad? Un vaso de metal. Tú no puedes ver qué es lo que hay dentro a menos de que no lo sacudas o lo tires. Yeah. Y no fue hasta que José se encontró con su pasado que se dio cuenta, tengo falta de perdón. Dice que cuando él vio a sus hermanos, él entró y empezó a clamar que toda la gente del palacio se dio cuenta. Y es en esos procesos cuando pasamos que nos damos cuenta, esto no lo había conquistado todavía. Todavía no había aprendido a perdonar.
Wow.
Todavía no había aprendido a adorar en medio de la enfermedad.
Dios lo llevó por un proceso a él y él aprendió a responder a cada uno de ellos. Pero ahora viene un nuevo desafío, un nuevo proceso y él nunca se había reencontrado con ellos.
Con las heridas del alma.
Esas heridas que nadie ve. Esas heridas que quizás hoy alguien nos está escuchando y ese alguien eres tú. Estás en sintonía y tú no has aprendido a responder a este dolor, a la traición, al abandono, a la burla, sin número de cosas. Sin embargo, es solamente una reintroducción de Dios para dar a descubrir lo que verdaderamente hay aquí en el corazón. Hay algo lo cual siempre digo usualmente en las predicaciones y es lo siguiente: los desafíos no solamente, los desafíos no nos destruyen, nos descubren. Challenges do not really destroy us, they discover us. Traen a luz lo que hay aquí en el corazón. Oh, yo soy bien amable. And then something breaks loose. Like, my God, you are not amable, you are not loving, you need the love of Jesus in your heart first. Porque los desafíos, temporadas impredecibles. Yo soy bien paciente. That's my last name. That's my middle name, patience. And something gets out of your control. Oh, no, you don't have no patience. You're worried, you're preoccupied, you're crying, you're frustrated. People around you that love you don't even have fault in what's going on. And you're taking it out on them. It's our response that reflects what we are carrying here on the inside of us. We were speaking about Job. Hablábamos de Job y cómo él es puesto en una posición donde él tiene que responder de una forma. Y aún el enemigo lo lleva a un momento de tentación, of temptation. And aquí lo que está en lugar es la forma en cómo él va a responder. What's on the line here is not Job's blessings. It's not Job's cash. It's not Job's Lamborghini outside of his house. What's on the line here is Job's response. Sometimes the enemy, God will use the enemy. God will use the enemy. Even the enemy is a tool in God's hands. Because look at how God, it's as if God knew that he knew that Job would respond correctly. It's as if God knew, I give you permission to touch all of his goods, just not him. As if God knew how he would respond. My question to you is, how well does God knows that you will respond when we get afflicted, when we go through a circumstance? It's not easy. It's not easy learning and knowing how to respond. I want to hear a life experience of somebody. Hey, Leslie, let's pass it on to Leslie. Leslie said, I'm here. Hey, I'm so excited that I forgot to introduce my guest, Keith Allen, Inmortal. Yo, an estrella all the way from Corona, California. She drove. Oh my God. We had been trying to organize this for a while, and that while came to this moment. So thank you so much, Estrella, for being here. And Leslie, your sister. Wow. Yeah.
She's my little sister. She's my little sister, but sometimes I feel like I'm the little sister. But I think it's interesting because any Christian that you ask, like, how should you respond to a difficult season, will know the answer. Like, if you ask yourselves, how should I respond in a difficult season? You'll know to say that it's by holding on to God, by holding on to his word. But the problem with that is that that's actually harder to do than it is to say. And I remember something went wrong and I was going through a situation and I was like, okay, like, I know what's going to happen. This is my moment of my season of trial. Like, I'm just gonna hold on to God, and I know, like, in the end it's gonna work out. And I remember that, like, the weeks were going by and I wasn't getting the response that I wanted, and time was going by, and I was like, okay, God, like, what's happening? Like, I'm having so much faith and trusting that, God, you have a plan, you're gonna make it work. But, like, when you start to see that you're not receiving that answer, then that's when it starts to, like how we were saying, show like what's in our heart. And I remember, so much time had passed, and I was like, God, like, what's going on? Like, why haven't you responded? And I remember, because I am a kind of a control freak, so I remember in that moment I was like, you know what, I'm gonna stop faking that I have all this faith, and I'm just gonna be honest, and I'm just gonna tell God, you know what, I can't do it. Like, I'm not okay. And, like, I give it to you, God. Like, I'm gonna stop pretending that I have all this faith, and knowing that you are gonna do something. I know that you are, but I should be honest with God and
Yes.
be able to say, like, I'm scared. I'm sad. I feel like
Yes.
you should have responded and you haven't. And I got to that moment, and it was that moment when I remember my mom asked me, like, are you okay? Like, we like went on a car ride, and she stopped the car and she asked me, like, are you okay? Because I'm one to, like, hide how I feel. Like, if I'm going through something, I don't really want to tell anyone, because if I don't, then that's me pretending that I'm not going through something. And I remember she asked me, are you okay? And I just started crying, and I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna say it, I'm not. And that just saying that felt so liberating, because that was the point where I was able to truly give it to God, and, like, truly, like, be dependent on God, and knowing that He is gonna respond. It might not be the response that I want, or it might not be in the timing that I want, but that's what it truly is about. How do I respond to a difficult season? It's by holding on to God, but truly doing that, like, truly letting go of
Wow.
the situation, and knowing that stuff happens in our life. That's just what life is. We're not immune to bad situations just because we're Christian. And I feel like that's something that sometimes we don't talk about. Like, we want to say, like, oh, I believe in God, therefore everything always is good. But that's not what we see in the Bible with all these men of God. And I think that that's the answer to that, is trusting in God, but, like, truly with all your heart, being dependent on Him.
I think one of our greatest responses can be living a life surrendered to God, because that doesn't make you put an expectation on who God is. It just makes you accessible to accept whatever His will is. And I love, when we share, personal stories, because, it shows to bring, the reality of what, we go through. We all have challenges and struggles, and it's how we respond to them. And I believe that, to you, young one that's listening right now, one of the best ways to respond is just surrendering yourself to God. Is saying, what Leslie said, God, you know what? I don't know when will this be answered. I don't know how will it be answered, but I have certainty, that if I leave it in your hands. But I'm talking about really leaving it, because sometimes, God, I put it in your hands. No, look, I want to use this word. What does it matter? What does it matter? Like, I know this sounds kind of tricky. Like, well, you can't be irresponsible. Yes, you can't be irresponsible, and you can't live in denial. But sometimes I think that we do need to say, regards of what God answers to, I'm going to receive an answer from Him, if it's in the way that I am expecting it, or if it's in another way. But God has always shown Himself to be faithful. That's something that gives us hope and gives us, certainty, and, energizes and brings up our faith, because we know that one way or another, God has always revealed himself to be faithful. Job, went through his process, but at the end, we see a faithful God who doesn't leave him when everybody does. Joseph was going through all of his process, and we see a faithful God at the end that does not only deliver him from a prison or from a pit, but delivers him from the pain of his past that Carlos was saying. So sometimes God will take us through certain journeys, and the only thing we need to say is, God, if you're bringing me through this journey, is because you're going to take me out of it. Something really interesting happens in the people of God, the Israelites. Why would God take them, through, parting the Red Sea and taking them through? They could have gone, speaking, to the visuals, they could have gone through another route, but God took them a certain route. I'd like to see it from this perspective. God took them this way because they would always know. If they would have gone the human way possible, they would have said, no, probably it was us making this story up. But God forcefully takes them through a way where he has to part the Red Seas. So every time doubt would try to come and kick in, they would say, no, I didn't come into this by my strength with my GPS. I came into this because God parted the Red Seas in two. And that's what we want to speak into every young person that's listening right now. You're not where you are by accident. You are not going through what you're going through by accident. God has made a way where there's no way, and he has million ways to reveal who he is. So you just trust a little longer in that specific situation where you need God to work. Confía. It's so easily said, it's so easily spoken, pero es lo mejor que podemos hacer. Confía. Hey, every time we try to worry, we are trying to replace the trust that should be placed in God with my strength, with my intellectual, and it's not supposed to be like that. So God is telling you today, confía. We're going to go to a pause, pero vamos a regresar, y en este último segmento vamos a orar por ti y vamos también a adorar a Dios. We got some worshipers in the house tonight, and it's going to be very, very good. So no te vayas, and we're going to worship together with you. This is the Hangout, and we will be right back.
Hey, ¿qué tal? Soy Quique Pavón y aquí estoy mandando un saludo a todos los que sois parte de las redes y de la comunidad de la radio Inspiración, que sale desde Los Ángeles para todo el mundo. Que Dios te bendiga y siempre conectados con la mejor música y la mejor programación. ¡Chao!
Todos los que están escuchando en Radio Inspiración, estamos aquí con todo el grupo de The Hangout. Y solo queremos tomar unos momentos para adorar juntos, amén. Así que donde quiera que tú te encuentres, siéntate libre, cierra tus ojos y vamos a adorar a nuestro Dios, amén. Aleluya. Gracias, Padre, te damos. Te adoramos, Señor. Tú eres digno, Padre. Elijo hoy agradecerte, Dios. Te adoraré con mi corazón, despierto en tu presencia. Despierto en ti, mi Dios. Vamos juntos, pueden decirle, bueno eres tú, mi Dios. Bueno eres Dios. Gracias por tu misericordia. Vamos, dile gracias. Gracias en espíritu y verdad. Gracias, yo te digo gracias. Y como el sol es tu fidelidad y tu infinito amor, inmenso como el mar, despierto en tu presencia. Cada día que yo vivo, despierto en ti, mi Dios. despierto en tu presencia. Despierto en ti, mi Dios, porque bueno eres Dios. Vamos, dile bueno, bueno eres Dios. Gracias por tu misericordia. Te digo gracias en espíritu y verdad. Gracias y yo te digo gracias, Señor. Y tú y solo tú despiertas mi interior. Mi gozo es darte gracias. Gracias, tú y solo tú, oh tu Señor. Despierta mi interior. Y es mi gozo decirte gracias. Llena mi corazón de agradecimiento, Señor, porque tú y solo tú, oh Señor, has saciado mi alma. Solo tú, oh Padre, has llenado mi vida. Es por eso que te canto, es por eso que yo te digo gracias, Padre. Oh, llena mi boca de tu alabanza, que mi espíritu te alabe, que mi espíritu te adore, Señor. Es mi gozo darte gracias. Gracias, Padre. Y tú y solo tú despiertas mi interior. Vamos, díselo. Mi gozo es darte gracias. Oh, llena mi ser, oh Padre, porque tú y solo tú despiertas mi interior. Y yo te digo gracias. Oh, yo creo, Señor, que al adorarte tu presencia inunda mi ser. Tu presencia inunda mi vida, Padre. Al adorarte tú transformas mi interior. Tú sacias mi corazón. Es por eso, Padre, que no me canso de alabarte. Te digo gracias. Gracias, Señor. Oh, tú llenas mi corazón de agradecimiento. Porque bondadoso has sido hacia mí. Tu misericordia, Padre, es más que suficiente para mí. Gracias, Señor. Gracias, Padre. Y tu amor que me rescató, que me limpió, que me da. Vamos, si tú te sabes esta alabanza, dile tu sangre abrió el camino y nunca se cerrará. Tengo libertad y tu amor que me rescató, que me limpió, que me da vida. Es tu sangre, Dios, que abre el camino. Tú abriste el camino. Ya no hay separación entre yo y tú. Ya no hay separación, Dios. Oh, por tu amor. Oh, gracias, Señor, porque tú has roto el velo en dos. Tú me has dado vida eterna, Padre. Hoy yo quiero disfrutar de tu presencia. Ayúdame a comprender, Señor, que la vida eterna comienza ahora, que la vida en abundancia comienza hoy, Padre, porque al tenerte a ti, mi Dios, yo lo tengo todo. Oh, gracias, Padre. Vamos a tus labios, dile gracias, Jesús. Gracias Jesús, porque tú abriste el camino, porque tú restauraste el camino hacia mi Padre. Y ahora yo puedo gozar, y ahora yo puedo danzar, yo puedo vivir, oh Padre. Oh, tu amor que me rescató, oh, tú lo has hecho, que me limpió, que me da vida eterna. Tu sangre abre el camino y nunca se cerrará. Tengo libertad. Dile lo único que quiero. Y lo único que quiero es adorarte. Lo único que quiero es adorarte. Vengo a tus pies para entregar mi corazón. Lo único que quiero es agradarte. Oh, lo único que quiero es agradarte. Por siempre cantaré de tu amor. No me canso de decir. Lo único que quiero es adorarte. Lo único que quiero es adorarte. Vengo a tus pies para entregar mi corazón. Lo único que quiero es agradarte. Lo único que quiero es agradarte. Por siempre cantaré de tu
Yeah, I'm here. I'm hanging out with this keyboard. And you know what? Nos estamos preparando para lo que se viene. We are getting ready for what's coming este septiembre 9. Ya sé que te guste la música. Ya sé que tienes un corazón de adoración. My goodness, you have to be here en Radio Inspiración, Familias de Inspiración. I want to invite you. Quiero invitarte y quiero decirte que hay un lugar aquí a la mesa para que tú te unas con nosotros. It's going to be amazing being able to know you, to meet you. If your age is anywhere from 13 to 26, you have to be here. Si estás entre las edades de 13 a 26 años, tienes que estar aquí. ¿Dónde puedes encontrar la información? Bueno, puedes encontrarla en radioinspiración.com. radioinspiración.com. Septiembre 9, día sábado. Va a ser de mucha bendición poder compartir contigo. God bless you.
Radio Inspiración ha estado por más de 2 décadas transmitiendo por sus ondas radiales a todo el sur de California y por todo el mundo a través de la 1390 AM, llegando a todo el condado de Los Ángeles y Orange County, 1240 AM en el condado de San Bernardino y 1130 AM en el condado de San Diego y Tijuana. A lo largo del tiempo, hemos querido acercarnos a nuestra comunidad con diferentes eventos para ser instrumentos de Dios y llevar principalmente el alimento para el alma, que tanto lo necesitamos como seres humanos. Nos hemos reunido para orar, interceder, adorar y fortalecernos juntos como pueblo de Dios en distintas ciudades, iglesias y lugares. Por eso en este 2023, queremos seguir siendo de inspiración y llegar a todas las comunidades que nos sea posible, llevando el mensaje del Evangelio a los matrimonios, familias, jóvenes y niños, a través de diferentes eventos en las iglesias y en la calle junto a la movida. Creemos que veremos el tan prometido y anhelado avivamiento para nuestra amada California, porque donde abundó el pecado, sobreabundó la gracia.